We have a piece on our website called the SEO delusion. So I think the B2C e-commerce tail is wagging the rest of the marketing world's dog. So again, if you're selling socks, I get it. There's however many sock companies there are, and if you come up near the top, maybe they'll buy your socks. I get that. Low consideration purchase. It is a game of getting a huge volume of people to your website to buy your socks. If you're in professional services and you've got 20 clients, I don't want 1,000 people on my website. I don't want 20,000 people, which are actually not that. I don't want 25, 100,000 people on my website. I mean, it's pointless. I need the right 5 decision makers to become my next 5 clients. So that's actually a question I'll often ask someone in a new business call is, how many customers do you have? And they'll say 30 or 60 or whatever they'll say. And I said, so you don't need 50,000 people on your website. You need to find out where they're going and create content there and build trust.
This is the Play Your Position podcast, where we huddle up, call the plays, and inspire you to run your ball into the end zone. Are you ready to score more game-winning touchdowns in your life, business, and career? Then listen up, because it's game time, baby. Now, here's your host, Mary Lou Kaiser.
Hello, Team PYP. Mary Lou Kaiser here. Welcome to today's episode of the Play Your Position podcast, where we talk all things leadership and business development and personal development and lots of stuff in between. And today is no exception. I have got a wonderful guest who has suited up and taken the field. He's going to bring us into his life and give us all some inspiration and ideas for how we can get out there and play our positions more effectively. His name is John Miller, and he's coming to us today from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. John, are you ready for kickoff?
I am. Thanks, Mary Lou. It's great to be here. I appreciate it so much.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk with you. So, team, here's some things I know about John. He is the visionary founder behind Scribewise, a content marketing agency dedicated to helping B2B firms grow. With a skilled team of writers, designers, and strategists, John is on a mission to make B2B marketing better. He champions the concept of courageous marketing, advocating for a shift from bland to bold in the business world. His passion led to the creation of his book, Playing It Safe Sucks, a manifesto for courageous marketing. John and his company help mid-sized B2B firms reshape their growth strategies with a focus on trust-based relationships, all while proudly remaining SEO-cynical. And he's got so much to share with us today, team. So John, let's set the stage. Tell us your story about when you first got the call to leadership. How old were you? What was going on in your life? And then connect the dots between that and what you're doing today with Scribewise.
Sure. Thanks, Mary Lou. I appreciate that. Thank you for the introduction. I would say leadership was always something that was very interesting to me because I grew up a huge sports fan. I am a huge sports fan. We were talking right before it came on. I actually worked for the Philadelphia Eagles for a little bit of time as a radio host. So sports to me is always, there's such a focus on leadership in sports at the highest levels. And you hear so much talk about it. So I just kind of got learned about it sort of by osmosis over the years, and then kind of reached a point you could call it a midlife crisis maybe, where I decided I think I know the way to do this, and I feel like I can lead people, and I think I have some ideas that are worth following, etc. So I was working at a PR agency, and I left, and I had 2 business ideas, and I did the other one first. And that was a journalistic effort that covered Philadelphia sports. And the short version of that story is it was an artistic success, but a business failure.
Okay.
And then so the other idea I had was content marketing, which I didn't even know the term back in 2010. But by 2012, when the other thing was kind of winding down, and my wife was, and money was becoming a topic of conversation at home.
Sure.
And my wife was saying, apply for these jobs. And I applied for several jobs and nobody would hire me.
Wow.
And I just was like, There was one job in particular that I applied for that was a content marketing job at a tech startup. And as a writer, I tend to rewrite things. I don't just spit out the words, but it was kind of the early days of application tracking systems. And
Oh, yes.
they were keyword focused. I took all the keywords out because I rewrote my words. I got rejected within 30 minutes.
Oh, my goodness.
So I was just going through the whole thing and trying to interview. And then an old client of mine reached out, and then one thing led to another. And here we are. And one of the things I heard a couple of years ago from someone is that, and this definitely applies to me now, and it may have applied to me back then. So it was a blessing, certainly, to not get hired for any of those jobs I was applying for. But most entrepreneurs are psychologically unemployable.
Yes.
Which means we can't work for other folks.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm certainly there now if I wasn't then. So I just, you get to a point where, and then if you're a leader, you're also beholden to your clients, your employees, and anything. So it's not like at least I try not to be a selfish person about it, but try to lead by example in those types of things. But yeah, it's a journey I didn't set out on purposefully necessarily.
Right. And I am finding that more and more people are having some aspect of that variable in their story because of a number of factors. I think one of the most obvious is the rise of the internet and all the avenues. Content marketing certainly was not a term that was tossed around in an analog world, not the way it is now. And if you got into that in 2010, 2012, we were still in the infancy. I mean, I remember I actually have a book called Content Marketing by, and I've drawn a blank on the guy's name, but he was one of the OGs of content marketing, ended up selling his agency. I think it was the Content Marketing Institute.
Yeah, Joe Polizzi. Yep.
Thank you. That's it. And I liked him because he told the truth and really paved the way for what this thing is. So for listeners who may not be familiar with the term content marketing, I mean, it's central to what you do now. John, would you explain what that is and why we need to pay attention to it?
Yes, definitely. It's, I kind of have a love-hate relationship with the term content marketing. So, because I think it does mean a lot of different things to a lot of people. And in fact, I guess this was about 10 years ago, I wrote a blog post about my definition of content marketing. And then I tweeted it at Joe Polizzi. And then I flipped on his podcast a few days later, and he was telling me how I was wrong.
Oh, interesting.
So I actually have debated him about what it means.
Yeah.
So, but in our world, so a lot of people, it's kind of a euphemism for SEO. I disagree with that. I think content marketing has always been a focus on thought leadership and presenting your thoughts on your industry and your prospective customers' needs, your audience's needs, without automatically selling them something. So it does have to have a business purpose, but it's not, and I think it really aligns with the way people buy things now and the way people consume information. Like if you write a blog post about your company, I don't really care. If you write a blog post about leadership or whatever industry, we're in a bunch of different industries, whatever SaaS space you're in, whatever problem you're solving, then I'm much more intrigued. And content marketing to me is, I always like to think that it's journalistic to a certain extent. People don't necessarily agree with that, but I would say it's journalistic in that you're reporting on trends in your industry. And we use content marketing as, in our world, we're focused on demand generation, which is brand building and thought leadership. To me, those combined are building trust. And to me, that's marketing's, not just content marketing's, but marketing's job is to build trust at scale.
Okay, I like that.
Nobody buys anything from a company they don't trust or a person they don't trust.
Right.
And we are more and more cynical. We are more and more inundated with content. So how do you break through? How do you create those connections? And to me, content marketing is a great way to do it.
Yeah, and it is a longer game, isn't it? You don't just put a tweet out and expect the flood of demand to show up. And I think in the early days, there was that illusion because some people were getting a result like that. And it's because of, again, a lot of variables. And you've seen the rise of the internet. You've been on that ride with what you do now. And you wrote a book, which is a form of content. And it's on a personal note, Team PYP knows I'm a huge book advocate. I've written books. I help people write books. I think it's the pinnacle of thought leadership. So why don't you bring us into this book with the awesome title, which I was saying to you in the pre-chat. I'm going to read it again. Playing It Safe Sucks, the need for marketers to be more courageous at, well, that's not the title. That's one of the topics in it. The title of the book is Playing It Safe Sucks, a manifesto for courageous marketing. What is courageous marketing? Tell us about that, because I don't care what business you're in today, marketing is going to be a part of what you do or your company does.
Right. Because everybody is a brand ambassador.
Yes.
Every employee, they might not be a good one. They might be a negative one, but everybody has access to your audience because of social media. So I think it's important to understand that. So courageous marketing came out of a brainstorming idea we had here at Scribewise, which was a year and a half ago. We were saying, oh my gosh, we're going into a recession, which apparently never happened.
Nope, it didn't. We're doing the stock market's going gangbusters right now.
But the downstream effects of the recession did happen, at least when it comes to people taking chances and continuing to be aggressive in business. So there's a great statistic that in the year 2019, by the year 2019, half of the companies that had been in the Fortune 500 in the year 2000 no longer existed.
What?
They were gone. They may have been acquired. It wasn't all negative, but they may have been acquired. But half of them were gone.
Amazing.
They were no longer existing entities. And it wasn't just because of their marketing, but it was because they got fat, dumb, and lazy as organizations, right? Yeah. If you're, I guarantee you, none of those companies, none of the executive leadership of those 500 companies in the year 2000 thought, holy smokes, we're in trouble.
Oh gosh, no.
Right? They were like, this is fantastic. Let's go out on the yacht and have some drinks, right?
Yeah.
So if you're standing still, you're falling behind. And that certainly applies to marketing. And I would argue that marketing really needs to lead the charge for a company. You're the one building the audience. You're the one building the brand. You're the one kind of claiming the beachhead before the rest of the business comes along. And that takes courage. That requires taking some chances. And I do get frustrated with, myself is included in this, but us marketers, we talk about, wow, Apple, man, wouldn't it be great? Well, think of the marketing chances Apple has taken through the years. It's not just because they have great products, which some people would argue that, PC-based products are better. But their brand took lots and lots of chances. And, everybody kind of defaults to the Super Bowl ad 20, however many years ago. But beyond that, like just the Think Different campaign, all of the things that they've done, they've taken chances. Sometimes they didn't work out. They got blasted when they put a U2 album on everybody's phones 10 years ago.
Right.
So it doesn't always work out, but they've taken a ton of chances.
Yeah.
And I think marketing's job is to take chances.
Okay.
Not stupid chances, not crazy chances, not just but you can. So we have a bit of a methodology in the book for how to go about building up your courage to have courageous marketing.
What's one way listeners could do that at any level? Whether I know your main audience is B2B, I think though what you're talking about, John, is applicable to anybody, a solopreneur, an artist, somebody who's got maybe a small mom and pop shop or a realtor, somebody who is out wanting to, as you said earlier, grow and perhaps scale to whatever degree makes sense to them.
Well, first of all, I think it's tempting to think any press is good press, and I don't agree with that.
Okay.
Although it's probably, if you look at certain things like politics, maybe it is true, but
oh God.
but let's not talk about that, Mary
Let's
Lou.
not.
But I just finished reading a couple of biographies, one of Elon Musk, one of George Lucas, right?
Okay.
Two very different people, two extremely successful people. And one of the commonalities between them is that they ignored rules that they decided were stupid.
Nice.
And they didn't just ignore the rules because they were a pain in the neck or they found them onerous, but they knew their stuff so well that they challenged them and they ignored them and they found a better way. And I think it's very tempting to rush to, I don't want to follow that. It's a pain in my butt. But they went far beyond. They're like, it doesn't make sense for these reasons. And Elon Musk in particular is famous for grilling his, he's making rockets, right? Flying people.
Mm-hmm.
If something goes wrong, it's a big deal. Like,
oh, yeah.
people die and it's tens of millions of dollars.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But when it comes to safety, this might be terrifying. It is terrifying. But when it comes to safety requirements, he's like, who made the requirement? It's a stupid requirement. Ignore the requirement. And sometimes it's blown up its face. And he's had a $20 million rocket lying on the ground.
Yes.
But those are the things, like, I don't know that we should be doing that. That's an extreme example. But ask why those rules exist. Ask why the requirements exist. And then question them. And I think that's the beginning of a lot of it.
I like that. I like that first step is to, first of all, get very clear on what rules are we playing by. What are the rules here in whatever context you're in? And then ask the questions. Who created this rule? Why is it so popular? Why does everybody follow it? And thank you for, catching that. This is not we're not advocating, team, to go out and be foolish and take ridiculous risks. I mean, everybody can think about I think of Law and Order SVU. You don't want to be on an episode of that because you did something to get attention. But it is about questioning. And so courageous marketing has to do. So talk to, what are some of the objections that you hear from clients at first when they know they need to get something done. They would like to see some change. They'd like to see some growth data, right? And so you and your team come in and you start talking about, a different way of doing things, and whoop, brakes come on. What are some of the common sounds of resistance that people give you? What are the fears that they have?
Well, I think a lot of times it becomes, and as an organization gets larger, it gets harder and harder to turn the aircraft carrier, right?
Yes,
because
it does.
They approved this plan in December, so we're going to run it through all of 2024. But by the middle of 24, we realize it's not the right plan and we need to adjust. But people are like, yeah, but this is what's approved. That's what we have to do, or else I'll get in trouble. We'll get in trouble. So, and there's, I do say in the book that not every moment of your career is the time for taking a courageous leap, because you have other things in your life. You might have, like, I really need this paycheck. Like, that's a legitimate thing, right?
Yep,
like,
it is.
I understand this probably isn't going to work out, but it's what I'm being told to do. And I need the paycheck at this point in time. So therefore I'm doing it. So I think there have to be some guardrails. But one of the things, but I want to, sometimes you're just not speaking to the right person, or they're not speaking to the right person, or there are days when I'm less convincing than other days.
Sure. And
I think, but one of the things that we do is we ask why a lot. So I like to say we're like annoying 5-year-olds. But
why?
But really, why are we doing this project? Like, what is our expected outcome? And do we really think it's going to bear fruit? And I think, and I'm seeing it a lot right now, because I do believe that digital marketing is changing at light speed today. It's, and you alluded to the SEO cynicism earlier, and we can get into that, but I think driving people to websites is an almost antiquated, it depends on what you're selling, but it's an antiquated notion for a lot of companies. And meeting people where they are is more and more important. But we've become addicted to the metrics that we laid out over the first 20-ish years of the internet. And
yes.
Those metrics are contrary to what our customers want a lot of times.
Yes.
And I can go into details on that, but just think about, like, I downloaded this in B2B. I download an ebook, you have my email address, and you start peppering with emails. I just wanted the ebook. Get off my back.
Right.
So now everybody's afraid to give their email for an ebook unless you've already built up trust, which takes time. You can't lead with these. So there's a lot of things that are changing around inbound marketing and digital marketing. And I think if you're 5 years behind, you are going to see a precipitous decline in your performance.
Okay, you have dropped a lot of very interesting. No, I do want you to to expand. There's a couple particularly. So one, what's your thought on, do companies need websites anymore? Is having a web presence in the form of a website still valuable, even if the goal is not to drive traffic to it?
Yes. Although I can see a future when that's not the case. But I would say today, yes, because you build trust. You have to go to the watering holes where your customers hang out, where they have conversations. That can be Slack channels, it can be LinkedIn, it can be trade shows, it can be some other forum, depends on your industry. It requires knowing your customer really well. You need to initiate the conversation in their house, not in your house. Like it's creepy to invite them into our house right away, right?
Yeah.
But before they buy from you, they're going to go to your website, because I say your website is for validation, not for volume. So they are going to go there and they're going to make sure you're real. And that's still a symbol and a very clear indication that the company is real. I was going to a company earlier today that I didn't know of, but for some reason I wanted to go and check them out. And they didn't have their SSL certificate.
Oh.
So I'm like, well, that's a negative. That isn't. Now I'm like, you guys are not buttoned up. You're not. And if you went to their website, be like, well, they have their act together, but they don't completely have their act together. So it's a bit of a strike. So you do have to have a website that creates credibility and that validates how smart you are or how good you are or whatever it is.
Okay. So that, yes, I think the future, we won't make predictions, that websites as we've known them will become a thing of the past. So take us into, oh gosh, you said so many interesting things. And then I was writing notes about, I love this line, we need to have conversations inside our customer's house, not ours. And I think everybody gets that backwards at some point.
Yeah, we become rude. Right? If too many companies are going to the cocktail party that is the internet and talking about themselves. Gross, right? Nobody wants to hang around with that person. So, understand, it's all about empathy, really. It's like, do we have empathy for our customers and their needs and their concerns and their fears and the pressures that are upon them? And we have to acknowledge that we hear them.
Right.
And try to be their partner in solving it potentially, but solving it is not like, oh, you should use our solution. It's trying to help them think about how to solve the problem.
That's the key. That because what you just said is, and maybe it's not fair because you and I have moved in this world for as long as we have, and we understand the psychology and the dynamics of interacting, through content, and yet this notion of, you said it earlier, people are cynical. People know that that everybody's selling something. Everybody is selling something. And so what are some ways that you help your clients approach that? Is it by asking a lot of questions? Is it by just openly saying, hey, we know you have a lot of other options out there. We want to present to you some ideas that could be helpful. And if you've got questions, give us a call. I mean, it's almost that we surrender. We're not in your face hammering, buy our stuff, which people still do today. It's everywhere on the internet.
It's a never-ending tug of war between sales and marketing.
Okay, talk about that tug of war, because those two are very different. And some people lump them together. They think marketing is sales, and they think sales is marketing.
Well, they need to work together, but
they're not the same.
Well, they're not. And to me, one of the things that I feel has become, and every company defines these terms differently, like SQL, MQL. So MQL, marketing qualified lead. The aforementioned downloading of an ebook does not make someone a marketing qualified lead. And the caveat again is that I'm talking predominantly about B2B, and every business is a little bit different, right? So if you have a shorter sales cycle and it's not a high consideration purchase, maybe they are a marketing qualified lead. But generally speaking, an MQL, to me, an MQL is when you've done enough marketing that the person raises their hand and says, I want to talk about something. And then you hand them off to sales. Until then, you're just really building the relationship for the most part.
Yes.
So marketing they need to work in symbiosis, right? Like marketing needs to understand sales to a certain extent. Sales needs to understand marketing to a certain extent. They need to work together in concert. But if they're both in a rush, which is often the case.
Yep.
Where everybody's like, because if marketing at the beginning of the year says, we're going to get you 100 marketing qualified leads. And then they say, okay, so that's 8.25 a month. So in January, they have to have 8 leads, and they might not have 8 leads, but they're probably going to try to stretch it to say these are leads, right? They're going to say, you gave me budget, company, to get 100 marketing qualified leads. So I'm going to do it. So you give me more budget again next year.
Mm-hmm.
But then we've immediately started to fudge what a marketing qualified lead is because we're in a rush to get to the finish line.
Right.
And then sales gets those leads and they stink.
And
so
then
sales gets ticked off. So you've damaged that internal relationship right away.
Yeah.
And we just need to be, and this is so easy for me to say and so hard to do. We need to be realistic and patient.
Yeah.
And at the same time, though, it's like, well, we have to meet our goals.
Oh, yeah.
It's halftime here at the Play Your Position podcast, and we've got ourselves a great game. While you're up grabbing another snack and topping off your favorite beverage, make sure to subscribe to the show so you never miss another play. PYP is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever great podcasts can be found. Now, let's get back to the game.
That pressure then causes people to make decisions that aren't always thought through, or they might be a little shady, fudging, like you said, this is a really good, well, not really, now.
Yeah, these Gmail accounts are not marketing qualified leads. They're just not.
Yeah. The whole list building, mantra that has been, that drumbeat has been consistent for, a couple of decades now. It's what so many of the top voices will just beat that drum all the time, is work on you build your list, build your list, build your list. Well, if you build your list with the wrong people, it's worthless. You
Right.
could have a list of 100,000 people, but if they're either fake accounts or I learned this back in the early 2000s to create one account, free account, like in Gmail or Yahoo or whatever, and use that every time you sign up for something. So your main inbox, the one where your mom or your kids or your best friend is going to write, you're not flooded with every single offer that now
Right.
you're going to get because of as you know, when you set up the email sequences, and some companies are just relentless. You get multiple messages a day, and sometimes you go to unsubscribe and they won't unsubscribe you.
Yeah, it can be hard. It's
And
crazy.
that's, so all of this plays in.
Yeah, and if you're buying socks, okay, fine. Like I don't need to think long and hard about buying socks. If I'm buying an ERP system,
Yes,
or whatever platform, I don't, I'm going to make the decision when I make the decision. I'm going to make one, hopefully, every 10 years.
Right.
Like
right.
So that's an important point. So there's statistics, and it's all ish, but approximately 3% of your audience is actually actively in market at any given time.
Okay.
So, but we treat 100% of the market as if they're actively buying. We need to spend a lot more time and effort creating content and providing marketing and putting marketing out of the world for the 97% that is going to buy maybe at some point. And, but it might be 2 years.
Yeah.
And we can't rush that because their subscription runs for 2 more years. Like it's just the way it is.
Yeah.
So, we've gotten so obsessed with, we've finally in marketing, there were numbers we could track because for the longest time there was not. Now we track individuals' behavior, and we become so obsessed with that we've undermined the trust. We killed that golden goose, and we just need to go backwards a little bit and have, be a little bit less. I always feel like I'm going to come across as a Luddite, but be a little bit less obsessed with numbers and trust our guts a little bit that we're doing great marketing, which means hiring really qualified people with great ideas. And then understanding that they're not going to bat 1,000, they're not going to get it all right.
Right.
But that takes patience and faith and trust and all of those things that don't have numbers.
And yet we are so numbers obsessed. Oh, look how many followers my account has. Look how many YouTube views this one channel, blah, blah, blah. And somehow, our brains just say, oh, that person must be really successful, or this is somebody I need to follow, or this is the company that we need to do business with because, and anybody knows all those numbers can be bought. It can be completely fabricated. And now I would like you, because you talked about this, when I was doing some recon on you about the role of AI is here now. Mm-hmm. So how are you seeing AI impacting marketing and the effect it's having on the consumers? Because ultimately, that's what every business needs, is its own little pool of consumers who know, like, and trust you, are going to buy from you, whether it's once every 10 years or once every month or once every week or whatever,
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. The 100 raving fans.
Exactly.
Or 1,000, whatever the
I
right
think it's
number
1,000. 1,000. Yeah.
100 would be fine for most companies. Most companies just need the next 5 customers, right?
Right.
So AI is absolutely here to stay. The genie's out of that bottle for sure.
Mm-hmm.
People ask me all the time, is that a threat to your business? It is. It's also an opportunity for our business.
Mm-hmm.
So we use it a little bit currently. We actually have the intention was for it to be an ebook. It ended up not being an ebook. It's just an ungated page on our website that I sat down to write about a year ago. And ChatGPT was huge. It was probably 11 months ago. ChatGPT was huge. I don't think it probably doesn't stand up to scrutiny less than a year later. But I started at 10 o'clock in the morning. I put a bunch of prompts into ChatGPT. It spit out 3,000 words.
Mm-hmm.
I rewrote all 3,000 words. It's probably about 2,500 words now. I was done by 4:30.
Mm-hmm.
That would have taken me weeks without AI. I rewrote the whole thing, but it gave me all of the raw material I wanted to mush around and play with. And I tell people that, like, I've never done cocaine in my life, but I bet this is what it feels like. It was like, wow, this is wild.
It does give you a rush, definitely.
So things like that, you can absolutely double, triple, whatever the right number is, your productivity. But I also think at the same time that it's useless without a human being at the beginning of that content creation process to ask the right questions and to know the right questions to ask.
Mm-hmm.
And a human being at the end of the process to bring the personality to it. And I think it'll get better at both ends of that. AI will as time goes by.
Yeah.
But I do think there will always be a place for human created content. I think it'll become like artisanal pizza, right? It's like I can get a frozen pizza and it's great and it's fine. Maybe it's not great, but it's fine. Or I can, go pay $35 for a pizza here in Philadelphia, and it'll be phenomenal. So it's two different things. So I think for depends on your business. I think for people that are trying to create high level trust with other human beings, AI is. I have a very hard time seeing how that will ever be good enough.
Mm-hmm. The thing I remember reading somewhere that somebody bragged about, I was able to create 800 pieces of content in, less than an hour. And the question is, who the heck is we don't have time to consume that. So
Right.
this idea of the volume, like you can put out so much more content so fast. Who cares? No one's looking at it because they already have too many other choices. So it comes down to what you were just saying, John. It's like we need to employ our critical thinking skills and recognize that because of how many choices are available today for consumption, whether it's streaming or YouTube or scrolling Instagram or reading a book or whatever, fill in the blank, listening to a podcast. AI has not solved the problem of 24 hours in the day for every one of us.
No, not yet.
You know?
And I think, right. I think it also places premium on having higher quality
Correct.
content because
Yes.
you have to break through all of that noise. And you have to hold someone's attention, and our attention is extremely divided.
Yes.
So I think
No.
I think a lot of people who are playing the SEO game think they can just they can create a ton of content that has the keywords in it, and it'll be just fine for Google's algorithms. But if a human being actually reads it, I would argue that you're doing more harm than good for your brand.
Oh, I couldn't stand when I first learned about SEO as a writer. I'm like, I have to put this weird phrase all the way through to satisfy
seven times.
And I have on my blog, I have installed because they all come with it now is, either, Yoast or one of these,
right.
These monitors that will tell you your headline is this. And at the end of the day, for me, and I'm just speaking to myself, is I know what my point of view is, what my thought leadership is around, and that's what I write. And I do it because I do it just for me. And it does, I've built up a body of work. It's a track record as a solopreneur. People can go and check out my blog and see, oh yeah, she's been around a while. There's authority and there's trust and there's all those markers are there. But it took me a long time to do that. And I honestly stopped a while ago. And I'm so glad that I stopped caring about what the SEO score was because I really don't care. I look at my metrics. People aren't finding my blog because of a keyword phrase. People are going to my blog because I posted something on LinkedIn or I met them at an event and they went and checked me out. That's what's driving traffic to my website. So for people who, I guess, say there's a business out there and, they're meeting with a team of, and the team is just going on and on about, oh, you want to have SEO, SEO, SEO. Your Scribewise has a different take on it. You said be SEO-cynical. And it's, I think, because of some of the things you've already shared with us.
I do. It's we have a piece on our website called the SEO delusion, which is, so I think the B2C e-commerce tail is wagging the rest of the marketing world's dog. So again, if you're selling socks, I get it. There's however many sock companies there are, and if you come up near the top, maybe they'll buy your socks. I get that.
Right.
Low consideration purchase. It is it is a game of getting a huge volume of people to your website to buy your socks.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in professional services and you've got 20 clients, I don't want 1,000 people on my website. I don't want 20,000 people, would be actually not bad. I don't want 25, 100,000 people on my website. I mean, it's pointless.
It's pointless.
I need the right 5 decision makers to become my next 5 clients.
Yes.
So that's actually a question I'll often ask someone in a new business call is, how many customers do you have? And they'll say 30 or 60 or whatever they'll say. And I said, so you don't need 50,000 people on your website. You need to find out where they're going and create content there and build trust. And a lot of times it gets to sales enablement materials very quickly. So what are the conversations your sales folks or customer facing folks are having? And what are the questions those prospects are asking? Let's create content around that.
Yeah.
So to me, you have to do the technical SEO stuff, right? Of course. You're just shooting yourself in the foot if you don't. But WordPress does most of that for you.
Yes, it
unless you're
does.
just asleep at the switch. And ignore Yoast. Sorry, ignore it.
I actually
Assuming
deleted
you're
it.
assuming you're, a reasonably decent writer, which not everybody is. That's another topic for
Oh,
another day.
oh yeah. We could talk a
Um,
whole hour about that.
so, but the tricks we play to try to win over the affection of Google's algorithm undermines the trust we're trying to build with our potential customers.
Right. Google, we're not trying to get Google to buy from us. And yet we spend so much time trying to please Google.
We had a client that was very proud. We were helping them redo their website, and they were very proud because they had an accordion. They had like an FAQ type of thing on an accordion. So the page was a million miles long.
Yes.
And it was very basic. Entry-level person would ask these questions about the business that they're in.
Yep.
And so it took up a huge chunk of real estate. And they were that's driven a ton of traffic. I'm like, the high-level IT buyer that you're going after is appalled that this is on your website. Like, you're undermining the trust completely. They're thinking like, who do they think? They think we're idiots. Your prospect is thinking. Who wants their prospect to think that the person pitching them thinks they're an idiot? Which I know is a confusing sentence, but
no, I got it.
It's crazy.
It is.
But those are the things we do. Those are the things we do.
Yeah. And wouldn't you, based on all your experience, John, in this realm, I know I sound like a broken record, Team PYP. You've heard me say this before, but no one handed us a manual of how to do the internet. It's like we have made it up as we've gone along, and some people have hit it big, and other people have followed every rule, going back to rules that we started with at the beginning here, followed every rule and gotten nowhere. And they sit there and they throw their hands up and say, I don't understand. Why isn't this working for me? It's working for that guy, or at least that's what they're saying. I don't know. Maybe I can't believe whatever it is. And there just seems to be so much double talk and misinformation and what's a business to do?
Well, I do think most of the people out there giving advice are well-intentioned. And they're saying, here's what I did, and it worked. And it's not that difficult. And if you do it, it'll work for you. But the thing that we always forget is the internet changes every minute of every day.
Exactly.
So the thing that made Joe Schmo really successful in 2012
no longer exists.
Will embarrass the hell out of you in 2024.
Yes.
So you can't just read a book and execute that playbook and then wonder why it might work. But people's tastes have changed, the way the internet works, all of the way Google works.
Mm-hmm.
The context is completely different. It's not like you're in a lab running an experiment with a control group. Every variable changes every day.
Right. That, team, I hope that is one of the big ahas right here that John has shared so much today. But seriously, I guess I'm speaking to myself as much as all the people I know who listen to this. We cannot beat ourselves up for a system that does change on us daily. And you can open up an app that you were using and it was one way and it looks completely different the next day. And you're like, wait a minute. Well, that's the way it is today. So what it takes is that critical thinking, taking a step back, being patient, not forcing unrealistic goals to achieve, and recognizing that the reality of today is that things are going to change and that's outside of our control. What's in our control is to continue paying attention to our existing customers, right? Get to know our audience, the people we want to serve, and how can we serve them and get more of them, people like them to us. Now, there's another question I want to ask before you share where you hang out online. John, you talk about the uncertain times fallacy. What is that and why should we care?
So relatively quickly, I think most people would say that politically, economically, socially, the last 8 years have been tumultuous. And since at least 2016, people have saying, well, we live in uncertain times. And your tendency is like, we're in uncertain times, so let's play it safe. And if you did that because it was uncertain times, well, look where you are now. For 8 years, you did nothing. So
You played it safe.
So go back to the statistic I said at the very beginning, which is that in less than 20 years, half of the year 2000 Fortune 500 disappeared because they were coasting, they were playing it safe, they were not taking chances. And again, that's not 100% diagnosis there, but a lot of it was because they assumed everything was fine. You have to keep moving forward, or else someone's going to zoom on by you. So if you use uncertain times, if anyone in your organization is using uncertain times as an excuse, just question it. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, good. I love the contrarian nature of how you think, and also just ask questions, question everything. Team, question what we're talking about today. I mean, we have to, that's one of the skills I think that is going to separate the ones who continue to move forward and grow and the ones that just fade into the background. And no one's talking about by 2030 or even 2028, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this book that you have written is available, I presume, on Amazon,
Yep.
or not. I shouldn't presume that. Some people don't sell.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so where do you hang out online, John? Where can people learn more about Scribewise? And also, are you sounds like you're on LinkedIn. So
for sure, I would say the best place, we have a page on our website that we're building. So scribewise.com/PYP podcast. And we'll have a couple of different ways. You can buy the book there. You can also find it on Amazon, as you said. I am on LinkedIn. But go to scribewise.com/PYP podcast, and that'll get you started. That's the best way to do that.
Awesome. And team, that links to connect with John will be on his show notes page at pyppodcast.com. And we're at the part of the show where you get to talk about a couple of books that have been instrumental on your wild leadership journey, John, from working for the Philadelphia Eagles to not getting hired for a while to starting your own company and, learning as you go. So what do you turn to?
I do read a lot of business books.
Okay.
So picking two. So
it's hard, I know.
I'm looking at my bookshelf over here. So it depends on, every month it's different a little bit. But two, I think that have resonated for time. And I'm gonna give a plug for a third one too. So
yes.
First I'll do that one. So there's a book by Ryan Berman called Return on Courage, which is very much about, that was when I was first doing research about how can we exhort companies to not be afraid of this looming recession. I found his book. It's a terrific book. It's not just about marketing, but it's return on coverage for businesses. And he's a smart dude. And then the other two I would say, one is almost a self-help book called Learned Optimism by Professor Martin Seligman.
Okay,
so
yeah.
He is the father of positive psychology. And I think for anybody in business, one of the most defining factors of people who are successful versus those who are not is your, what he calls explanatory style, how you explain what happened to yourself. Did something go wrong because you suck? Or did something go wrong because the universe is stupid and they'll figure out that you're smart at some point? So that's a good book to read. It is a little self-helpy and not really a business book. And I think the other one I would say is Radical Candor, which I put off reading for a long time because I thought it was an excuse to be a jerk. But a friend of mine said it's really not, and you should give it a read. So I did. And there's a lot of great lessons for being honest with your team, honest with yourself and honest with your team, and not in a mean-spirited way.
Right.
In a way that builds up individual team members, that therefore builds up the team, which therefore builds up the company.
Yeah. Okay. So these three books, team, will be on John's show notes page as well. Leaders are readers, and I'm constantly impressed with the recommendations that I get from my guests. I've never heard of Return on Courage, and that excites me because I just,
Good.
I think we need to be building our personal libraries consistently. And yes, it is hard to validate what you said. It's difficult to pick the book or a book that you're like, yeah, that's the one. So sometimes it's just ones that you remember because it made you go, hadn't thought about that. Or I also like the fact that you avoided radical candor for a while, because there is that vibe out there right now around people don't want to be seen as a jerk, and yet jerkiness is everywhere. All over social media. It's amazing what people are willing to type in the comments of posts.
Yes.
So that is great recommendations. And as we wind things down here, it's been an awesome conversation. I want to thank you for spending a time with me today in Team PYP, but I'd like to give you the last word. John, my question is, what do you want your legacy, your leadership legacy to be?
My leadership legacy. I hope that when I've moved on, that my team feels that I gave them every opportunity to succeed. And if I did that, then everything probably worked out okay.
Hey team, Mary Lou here. Who's number one in football changes from year to year. Fashion trends come and go, same with musical tastes. But leadership skills, they never go out of style. In fact, these days, leadership is an essential survival skill for a world that demands more from us than ever before. To succeed these days, you need to know how to show up for yourself so that you can then do the work you love with people you like the way you want. The Play Your Position Leadership Playbook helps you do this, and it's free. Go to pyppodcast.com to download your copy today. If being more successful this year, next year, in the 21st century is on your to-do list, get your copy of the Play Your Position Leadership Playbook now. pyppodcast.com. It's at the top of the page. You can't miss it. That's pyppodcast.com, and start being more of the leader you are meant to be today. This podcast was produced by Daniel Romeros. Show notes for this episode can be found over at pyppodcast.com. I'm Mary Lou Kaiser. Thanks for listening.
Here at the Play Your Position podcast, we believe that the road to self-mastery and a life well lived starts with answering the call to leadership. That's when the fun really begins. Send this episode to any friends who might need to hear the inspiration and ideas you heard today. And feel free to rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform.